Hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Halstead, and I work for Chainlink Labs. Today, we are going to be speaking about NFTs. Are they more than just a JPEG? Alongside, I'll let them introduce themselves. You want to start?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Robbie Cochran. I'm a co-founder of Chain Guardians, which is a GameFi play-to-earn ecosystem.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis, the founder of Vera, and we're building first decentralized protocol to let you do rentals and mortgages with NFTs.
I'm Andrew Campbell. I'm the program lead for esports and content creators at Axie Infinity. I basically get to be the community manager and run a bunch of cool esports tournaments. So go GameFi, go play to earn.
Awesome. Well, to start the panel off today, I guess, what do I think about our JPEGs more, or our NFTs more than just a JPEG? So my original thought, and maybe that'll lead to Vera, was first time I heard about an NFT, I really thought about it being a fractionalized piece of real estate. So we've really come a long way from my original thoughts to what is today with all the fun JPEGs and PFPs. So yeah, like would love to hear what you think about that, Vera, and if you have any comments.
Sure. I think with any new types of technology, experimentation with it always begin with some low-hanging fruits that a lot of people in a society or culture can understand. And things with memes and JPEGs and arts is definitely something very prevalent right now in NFTs, including gaming and gaming items included. So I think that regardless of whether someone agrees or not agrees with NFTs, experimentation is extremely healthy. And NFT being a very new asset class, I personally believe it'll be a next trillion-dollar industry, but there's a lot of work needed to make that possible, right? And just look at perspective. It took about 5 years since the birth of Ethereum in order for the DeFi infrastructure to be created, where you have DEXs and swaps and certain protocols to get DeFi TVL to about $1 billion. And then it take 2 more years to jump it from 1 billion to 100 million. So a huge explosion, right? I think with a new asset class, such as NFTs, it will definitely take a couple years at least for the proper infrastructure to be built before there'll be a lot of more realistic real world use cases beyond just JPEGs. And we're very excited to work with several other projects and amazing developers in the space to make this dream a reality in the very near future.
Yeah, I think utility is probably the word that I'll keep coming back to. In the GameFi space, like I'm pretty new. I've only been full-time with Axie for like 7.5 months. So I've been following crypto and blockchain for a long time, but I haven't made the full-time plunge. I'm still less than a year in. I really didn't get the NFT thing at the beginning in terms of artwork and why this certificate was more valuable in some cases than the actual physical piece that it could be connected to or the actual artwork. But when I got introduced to Axie, this idea of what if your NFTs could do something? What if they were a game asset where it's not just a piece of art or a collectible, but it's something you can actually use in a game, you can sell, you can trade, you own this asset, but it also provides you with not only a financial return, but social value within the system and access to the system in terms of gameplay. And I think that's what really opened my eyes to start to understand that NFTs are much more than just JPEGs. And actually make the plunge. I mean, that was what tipped me over to say, hey, this whole thing's worth it, man. This is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, there's lots of really good points coming around. I think, obviously, as somebody who works in the GameFi or blockchain gaming industry, a massive cornerstone of what we build is related to NFTs. So naturally, I'm probably quite biased in my consideration about whether or not I'd consider NFTs just a JPEG. I think it obviously depends on the perspective and probably the use case behind the NFT, which Andrew kind of just touched upon there. Principally, one of the fundamentals in terms of how NFTs are utilized within a gaming ecosystem is that they have some sort of utility. So you could use it as like a character representation in a game, or if it's like a metaverse related, product, for example, it would be an avatar, or it'd have, like, let's say, interoperable possibilities across different ecosystems and so on and so forth. So by its very nature, an NFT shouldn't just be a JPEG. However, depending on how, what that NFT represents or the utility that may be assigned to that, there are some NFTs which are just a JPEG. And I think that we've seen probably a lot of, let's say, PFP projects pop up recently, which really, more often than not, you know, there is not much functionality beyond the fact that this is a nice little piece of artwork, right? And even at that, it might not be particularly original either. It might just be a slight differentiation from another one that was minted, you know, a couple of blocks prior or anything like that. So I think the difficult thing here is that there's a massive area in which we need to educate users coming into the ecosystem that are looking to kind of like get involved with NFTs, is that not always, but more often than not, utility needs to be a massive kind of consideration into whether or not an NFT should have any sort of like value beyond the intrinsic, is this just a collectible piece of artwork or just a JPEG? So, you know, I don't know if that offers any kind of definitive answer into my opinion on that point, but I guess what I would kind of fling for is that NFTs should not just be JPEGs. For my philosophy would be that they should definitely have some sort of utility, drive some sort of value back to both the ecosystem to which they belong and the end user as well. You know, NFTs by their nature, often, you know, they, depending on, let's say, the contract of which they operate, they may have like metadata, for example, and that metadata may be used as it would be in like our ecosystem, for example, in terms of statistics within the game. So without a doubt there, it's not just the image that you see. There is a lot of going on in the back end there, which would be essentially driving sort of value towards that NFT.
Well, and this stuff can evolve too, right? Like what starts as literally just a JPEG collection can become a community, and that can become your ticket to the community, and you can build many things on top of that foundation. So this stuff does change quickly, and we have seen some of those projects that started just as like art, where NBA Top Shot is the one I keep going back to, where it was just a clip, and now it's becoming way more than that, and like a VIP access ticket to these experiences you can't get access to otherwise.
Well, they say a picture is worth more than 1,000 words, so I don't see anything wrong with JPEGs. In fact, I think NFTs is really not a technology. It's now kicked off this global social movement. And the amazing thing is, for the first time of human history, whether you're a creator, an inventor, someone who creates experiences, an entrepreneur, the things you create can be decided by the free market to put a value on it, right? And that value can be transacted between different people without fear of censorship, without fear of deplatforming. And so true freedom of ownership is actually exercised without needing to depend on big tech, big banks, or any type of institution. And I think that that type of freedom is what gets a lot of people excited or whatnot. And I think it all started with, you can say, a JPEG. You know, I think these stories are what is propelling this movement. Last time I checked, I know there's people and there's all these very expensive artworks that got sold. But I also believe that at the early stages of NFTs at the beginning of this year, I believe there was a little boy in India who nobody knows who he is, but he made this artwork and somebody bought it for $5 million, changing his life. It's stories like this that gets the momentum in NFTs, where everyone can tell their stories, and it's up to the market, where anyone now has an equal platform to be discovered, to be valued by the free market. So that's my two cents on
just
this topic.
Just to pick up on that, one of the reasons I got into crypto was over this idea of ownership of data. I was one of those people who would go out to a club like Elsewhere and go see a DJ play in front of 10 people and support their career and follow their career. And when I joined Chainlink and I got into NFTs, I started thinking about, you know, how could we really build communities with NFTs? It just opened up this world to me where, you know, if you have that first NFT of an artist and you go to that show, that address is recorded. And then every other show you go on to, you could almost be your own avatar, and you keep getting more and more clout for the more shows you go to. Then that artist is able to recognizably see how you are like one of those first people. You're so passionate about it and you really get that credit for it. And right now in our world, I don't really see that. You get all these other layers of promotion coming in, and they end up getting like all the clout that like you, that true organic first person out there in the crowd who went out there against all odds when all your friends wanted to stay home or do something else, like you were there first. And I really think that's how these NFTs build communities. And there's so much more you can do from there.
I mean, speaking of the music industry, I think it was Avenged Sevenfold just recently did a 10K PFP collection with their Death Bat logo. And it's sort of this idea of, we have a great community already. As a band, we do stuff and sell products, and how can we take this to the next level? And I think it dropped like last week, and it was pretty cool to see like mainstream musicians start to embrace this much more than just a JPEG, right? It's a community building tool and a reward for their hardcore fans.
Definitely. And I know, when you go to a concert, you get entered in these raffles. Like you get to get the swag, you get to go backstage. And I know so many times I've entered those raffles and I've never won. I'm like, how can you win? So a lot about you that out there might be asking, how is Chainlink really involved in NFTs? So one of the things we do is a verifiable randomness function. So we can build into NFTs, if you're one of the first 1,000 people to buy that ticket, you get to go backstage and meet the artist, or you get to talk to him on a Discord channel. There's all these different functionalities that can be built into NFTs that really are game changers and will push forward the ways we look at it.
So speaking of Chainlink, Vera, our labs, is actually working with Chainlink and in discussions with Chainlink right now. Because one things we want to do is rentals, right? And rentals mean people have to pay rent. But if you want to do it decentralized, there needs to be a way at periodic periods to ping the smart contract. And if you want to do that decentralized, I believe you guys have a product called Keeper or whatnot.
The Keepers.
And that's exactly what we're looking into right now to support such features in a more decentralized fashion. So yes, we should thank Chainlink for such innovations.
Thank you, Chainlink.
We are here to help everybody build and create the future they want. So we're just really giving you the tools and the middleware to go out and create those applications that can change anybody's life. You have the access to the internet and you have a cell phone, you really can do anything you want. But another thing as it relates to gamification I want to talk about is bringing off-chain data on-chain. So I see a future where an Axie character, is reacting directly to a weather oracle. So say you have the ultra summer Axie NFT during the summertime, like that one will have superpowers so that you can like power through like Super Mario, level up really quickly. So just really, really different, interesting ways that you can bring real world data and feed them into NFTs to make it more interesting.
I love it. The only problem with that is having a global audience. It's not summer all year round at the same place. So you gotta. That's a tricky part. But I like where your head's at, though.
Maybe a little more region based.
Yeah, I'm trying to mix in like real world events and things that are outside of the blockchain. We talked about this on the panel last night, and that's when things get really interesting. Pinging data already on the chain is one thing, and that's cool. But getting outside info in there and being able to utilize it in a meaningful way and a trusted way is really powerful, and I think has huge implications.
I'm chipping in here. Yeah, okay. So, in terms of on-chain, off-chain data, I think Chainlink obviously have built some really cool tools that a lot of GameFi projects can utilize. I know, for example, in Chain Guardians, we have implemented Chainlink's verifiable randomness functionality for some of our NFTs. And essentially, the real power of that is that if you look at any traditional game project or gaming ecosystem, it's like, there's an elements of RNG, random number generator. It's like, a chance to get a rare item or, a chance to do a critical hit on a character or, something like that. Obviously, you just have to trust the compute that's occurring in the back end for any game there. But with something like bringing that data on chain, like with Chainlink, for example, you can actually prove, the randomness of that number by essentially backtracking through the different chain points, right? I'm not being very technical here, but it can be verified that actually that number has gone through a load of different like oracles, right? And then it's produced that at the end. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, there's tools like this that are really powerful that enable you to kind of like add a lot of like, let's say, value proposition into the NFTs as well as the different gaming ecosystems. So, in terms of the on-chain and off-chain data considerations, there's huge amounts of potential for moving large amounts of this data on-chain. Obviously, such as transparency to your community and also bringing like unique experiences like with VRF. But at the same time, you've also got the user, and we talked a little bit about this last night, the user experience consideration is the fact that, gamers are just like anybody else. It's like if you click your phone, it unlocks, you tap an app, it loads, you want things instantaneous. It's just like in the same as a website. If things don't work, you probably close it down. You're getting a little bit annoyed by that. And it's obviously with gamers, they're probably the most impatient people in the world. I know I am for a fact. If I click the fire button and it's bang on someone's head and it don't kill them, I'm annoyed, and that's lag. And I guess in some ways by moving data on chain, you've got this consideration about, how much, let's say, detriment is it going to be to the user experience. So it's a constant, I think, process of assessment as to regards to what data you want on chain and what data you want off chain to enhance user experience.
Yeah, definitely. And just to pile off that, so a lot of projects out there have used our VRF for generating the different rarities. So when you go and you whitelist yourself and you're waiting, you're waiting for that mint to happen. Like, how do you know that your NFT is going to be different than any others? Like the VRF can it proves fairly that it can be more rare and it can be different. So going back to my childhood, like I was a huge Pokemon fan, gigantic fan. I remember I would go after school every day, get the packs. Like all I want is like that sparkly, like Charizard would be the ultimate goal. And how do you know you get a fair chance to get the Charizard? It's through using this type of technology that Chainlink's created. So it's super cool, super fun. The Bored Ape Yacht Club used us for their distribution of serum for making the mutant apes, and I thought that was just so cool to be a part of a project as large as they got to, really give people a lucky chance and make it fun and make it different.
Yeah, I'm curious what you guys think about those sort of gamifications around NFT collections, like Bored Apes and the Serum, but we're seeing way more of those. Like the Mega Toads came out not that long ago, and that's a whole nother level of feeding NFTs and then combining NFTs. How do you guys feel about this layer of gamification, especially on Ethereum mainnet? Like, is it worth it? Is this actually a value add? It certainly does make a case for NFTs being more than just JPEGs, but what is this? What are we really doing here?
I think that's a very tricky question because, especially with the Ethereum being such high gas fees, and speaking of which, Nike just burned $7 million of that like just yesterday or something, right? Minting their NFTs. So the question is creating NFTs for the rich only who can afford these gas fees? And that's really the big question with Ethereum. But regardless of these gas fees, I think it's still vital to have these experimentations and these things because that's what progresses innovation. But that also is what provides a motivation for all these other alternatives, like whether it's Polygon or Solana or Avalanche, to basically have cheaper gas fees. So, I see both sides, right? I think I'm pro for innovation, but I guess what a lot of these things are doing right now is I would love to see a lot more cases where low cost NFTs are going to pick up. And I think time is needed, but until we get to the point where NFT access to creation and enjoy the infrastructure NFT is really for anyone, we really won't really enjoy the full fruits of DeFi and Web3, what's meant to be.
If you don't mind, a follow-up question there. If the priority is low gas fees, do you see NFTs as equally valuable across the different chains? Like, is a mainnet NFT the same as a Solana NFT, same as a Polygon NFT?
I think, I think the answer is no. And the reason why is because NFT's value is largely not derived by the JPEG itself, but the community behind it, which dictates the value. And I think right now communities are kind of like mafia cartel type, where it's really siloed based on, like, you got the Solana gang, you got the Ethereum DeFi diehiders, you got the Avalanche Maxis.
You better get a Ronin shout out here, dude.
Right? So I think that because of the segmentation of the communities and what they put value on, it's different, right? Let's say if there was a CryptoPunk on BSC right now, I don't think is going to be as high value as a CryptoPunk on Ethereum, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain element of notoriety about having an NFT on ETH, and I also think a certain element of authenticity with having an NFT on ETH. If we look back and trace back where NFTs kind of came from, obviously Dapper Labs did a huge amount of work there, and I also know that shout out, Esteban Ardiano from one of the founders of Decentraland was really important in making NFTs decentralized on the back of the work that Dapper Labs did there. So if we look at about where NFTs kind of like the origins, they were ETH based. So everything that kind of comes after that, there's this argument of, is it a clone or an imitation of like the original? But then you've got that argument for NFTs in their entirety anyway, especially if you've got PFPs, which kind of further muddies those waters. I think, in answer to the question, I think if an NFT costs $50 to mint on ETH, then theoretically a user should always have in mind that if they're selling that NFT, that anything below $50 would be a loss. So would there be any logic in therefore in selling that NFT below that amount? And if they're cutting that, so there is that as a basic consideration. But then obviously, without a shadow of a doubt, all of the different like additional points that was referred to there with respect to the community behind it, the utility, which Andrew talks about, is probably the more important factors in determining the value of an NFT, and probably overrides actually which chain they are on.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. The whole thing about NFTs that's so neat is the communities they drive and they build. One of the reasons I got into crypto is because I went to an Ethereum meetup and I made some friends who introduced me to an entire new world, opened me up to a whole new group of people who had an open-minded way of thinking to change the world. And I really felt a lot by that community. And you can argue about all the different chains, but just finding those communities and building those communities throughout NFTs is so crucial and so important these days. Finding people, especially during a time when nobody was allowed to leave their homes, really just finding a community and people you get along with and can talk to. That means so much, and that's the huge value component of NFTs to me. Regardless of what chain you're on, is really find your vibe or find your tribe.
Speaking of chains community, I'm actually quite curious. From Axie, you guys start on Ethereum and now you're building your own Ronin blockchain, I believe, do everything. I was curious, how does your community react to that? And, frankly, have there been any blowback or anything? I'm just very curious.
No, it's a great question. And I think if Axie had come out of the gate saying, we're going to build our own side chain and we're going to start our game on our own platform and you're just going to have to deal with it, it would not have worked. But starting on mainnet created this trust and helped build the community. And remember, Axie also started 4 years ago. So gas fees were much lower back then, and they slowly have increased over time. So that user experience started pretty good and got worse and worse as gas got more expensive. And eventually it got to the point where our audience was asking us to make a sidechain. Please, we need another solution here. I want to breed my Axies, but I can't justify the cost that's just going to miners to play your game. I love your game, but it's unplayable. So once you have the majority of your community saying, please give us a solution, and we deliver a solution, they're pretty happy. The catch is not with our actual users now, but more the NFT owners on mainnet that are not comfortable going to a sidechain. My crypto podcast co-host, he just got onto Ronin because he had that mental block of, I believe in what you're doing and I believe in this chain and I trust it, but it still feels really weird to be buying things that aren't on mainnet. I mean, it is a proof of authority chain right now, and that is a deal breaker for some people. It will be a proof of stake chain soon. The RON token is being rolled out, and that is really important. And I think the key thing is our commitment to Axie becoming a DAO later on. It's very centralized now, but by the end of 2023, roughly, that's when the AXS tokens should be majority in the hands of the community, and the DAO will start to take effect. And I think that commitment is a big part of our community's commitment to us, knowing that we're building the foundation and it's going to be eventually in their hands. So those details and nuances, I think, are what is really important, and the community is excited about having ownership over the Ronin sidechain.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off that, what you said there, Andrew, I think we've probably witnessed a similar thing in terms of community sentiment within the Chain Guardians community as well, is that I think a lot of it depends on, your customer, the demographic of your community, if you like. Obviously, with Chain Guardians, it's predominantly GameFi, and they're interested in the gaming and the NFT experiences and such. More often than not, I feel as though 90% of the community, based on kind of general understanding, sentiment, and various, let's say, data and analytics and so on, and community feedback polls that we've had, I'd say probably 9 out of 10 would choose something that's slightly more centralized but more user friendly, than something that's more decentralized and less user friendly. But then you've to offset that, usually those 10% that are the real kind of diehards that will consistently kind of drive you towards ensuring that you remain decentralized, or at least building towards that, because those are the ones that have probably been with you from the start and are the ones that actually truly understand, the disruptive potential of, decentralization.
Yeah, on a personal level, it's kind of interesting because I do delineate a little bit between regular NFTs and GameFi NFTs, where I think in the context of a game where you have all these transactions, it really doesn't make sense for mainnet. It's just a lot of data that doesn't really have much to do with anything outside of the game universe. So the idea of Ronin or Polygon for these specific games makes a lot of sense to me. But when it comes to PFPs, if I'm buying a Bored Ape, I want that thing on mainnet, because I'm not like the gas fee to buy it once is fine. Then after that, I'm just happy that I have it and I'm not worried about these extra transactions. So maybe I feel a little hypocritical where when I'm buying NFTs, I want it on mainnet, but I work for a company that's all about NFTs on a side chain. And right now you can't bridge those NFTs off of Ronin into Ethereum. It is an Ethereum clone, so that's totally possible. But at this particular point in time, your assets are on Ronin, and some users do complain about that in the short term, but we have a long-term solution.
Yeah, I agree. For more expensive NFTs like Bored Apes, it definitely makes sense to be on mainnet. You want to make it secure, you want it reliable. But right now, the challenge, I think, is a lot of these companies are striving to have more utility for even the Bored Apes. And they're like, hey, a Bored Ape can be used in a Bored Ape game. A Bored Ape can start having drops, airdrops, and these and things. And more of this makes it where it's hard and harder to do it, especially you're constricted by gas fees. And while it's healthy, in my opinion, to have different chains for different utilities, right? Like for very expensive assets, use a secure chain, but for less expensive assets, you can use Polygon, for example, or others. But like now you have use cases where an expensive asset can be used for frequent transactions. And I think these are challenges that will need to be solved in upcoming years. Just like how when crypto first started, and DeFi was really new, you had all of these experimentation and protocols. And just earlier today, we were listening to how far we've come, like Ren protocol doing these amazing things, like all these different chains together. I envision, in the next couple of years, you're going to have more and more innovation on cross-chain NFTs, bridging, standardization of these things. But we're still far from that. And, we're just hopefully being one of many upcoming players in this DeFi world for NFTs, innovating in this sense.
We need more interoperability, I think, is a fact.
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
think.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just really quickly on that point. I think as well, it's about. It's okay, kind of indicating that we need these tools, and you're absolutely right. I think, for example, Andrew, you said with regards to your users will want the bridge from Ronin to Ethereum. It makes sense, but at the same time, it's like. Sometimes building these tools, maintaining them and ensuring that they're user friendly and so on and so forth in itself could be its entire own project. There are bridges out there which are their entire own project. And then you've got, let's say, a GameFi project that has to assess, do we build this ourselves or do we utilize a third party? Are the fees going to outweigh the benefits for the user? Are those fees going to be driven to the user? Are they going to be happy about that? And all of these kind of different, like, let's say, issues kind of get thrown into the water there for consideration. Like at Chain Guardians, we built an ETH to Matic bridge in 2019 that existed way back then. I say way back then, just shows how early this industry is, really, doesn't it? But it existed then for our NFTs. As a result of the bugs that we found, they had to actually release a beta net with Matic before obviously rebranding in Polygon going forward. But the point of this is that I'm getting to is not to shill the fact that we made this really cool bridge. The point is that there was no reason for that there. There was nobody that was going to utilize that bridge at that stage. So it's okay building those tools, but then, what's the added value proposition in terms of building those tools? How is it utilized across your ecosystem?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of ways to use those tools, but something we're working on right now is, imagine fantasy football. Every single football player has real world stats fed into the football player's NFT. Eventually, you can gamify this to the point where it's completely an NFT game. Like literally, you have one player, that player does well, it gains more value. You can create an entire game, entire world of gamified sports out of this. But the challenge is say you have a player's NFT and then you want to give away a jersey. But then giving away that jersey, it requires you to pay more gas than that jersey's worth. So it's essential right now that we build bridges to, maybe go from ETH to Polygon so that you can give away that jersey for less than it's worth. Because at that point, that's where we really hit into these difficult problems right now, is doing that bridge and making it the best user experience possible.
Yeah, about half of our users on Ronin are completely new to blockchain technology and crypto. Generally, these are users from parts of the world where the value proposition just makes obvious sense. Their flow chart is kind of, this sounds too good to be true. It must be a scam. Oh my gosh, it's not. Okay, I'm in. And it's really that simple. And they truly don't really care about what's under the hood in terms of the Ronin side chain or the Ethereum mainnet. They care about that user experience. Does this work? Can I play the game? Is it fun? Can I use my NFTs for the reason I bought these NFTs? So sort of to go back to that expectation, for the hardcore users, the people that have been in crypto or blockchain for 5 years, they're skeptical of side chains. But for new users, they're not that skeptical of side chains relative to the rest of the demographic. And yeah, I think for the mainstream kind of massive audience, that user experience is what we all need to work on. It's still rough out there.
I think just another kind of quick addition I'd like to bring in here is I think there was a really interesting panel on before ourselves, and obviously talking a lot about considerations of NFTs and that their place in, let's say, the regulatory environment. And one of the really interesting things that it is kind of on my mind as well, I think kind of remains unanswered when we're talking about interoperability of NFTs and so on and so forth, and what chain they kind of land on, is that I think Ethereum the Ethereum Foundation has already passed through, let's say, some legal complications or battles or whatever whichever way you want to put it. And my understanding was that Ethereum was not classified as a security because of the amount of use case and utility it had in different value proposition areas. So when an NFT exists on there on Ethereum, then you've almost got like that sort of seal of approval and consideration as well. I don't know how far that consideration has been extended for other side chains as well, and how that kind of is further muddied with moving NFTs cross-chain, whether that has any bearing whatsoever. But it's certainly something that I've always thought about, where in terms of where I want my NFTs and why I do kind of favor them on Ethereum myself. And in some ways, is that because I was one of the luckier ones to get in a little bit earlier in terms of my NFT collection, quite possibly and quite probably. And is that consideration as a result of the fact that I'm a founder of a GameFi project without a shadow of a doubt. But I do know of people who have sold large amounts of NFTs and have financially liberated themselves for 7 and in some case 8-figure sums. And they have been told by their accountant they might have to consider their NFTs as a taxable asset. And again, I think maybe the chain might maybe play a part in that. And if I was present in the room at the end, I might have even asked that question of the previous panel.
I guess to contribute to this discussion, one thing I can put into this is, believe it or not, when Vero was started, we actually start on Polkadot, which was not even mentioned in this conversation, because Web3 Foundation simply gave us a grant to build some smart contracts with them. And for those that understand Substrate and Polkadot, it's an excellent platform. There's so many tools. There's many amazing things working on there. But then one thing about NFTs are, since we're more in the DeFi space where we leverage smart contracts and whatnot, and we want to create applications and use cases for games or metaverses or any NFT applications, it's very important to work with a chain where there's already a sizable community, because you have to develop things like product fit. There's so many nuances, right? I mean, a lot of people saying you can just build this app, do this and that, but there's like 100 steps to really understand all the nuances and how you exactly program the logic into a smart contract. So what we realized was the Polkadot NFT community is definitely just not as large as, say, the one on Ethereum, or say Polygon or BSC or even Solana. And it had been difficult to basically acquire partners to do a lot of simple product fit testing and whatnot. So we decided to then build on Ethereum instead, where we had tons of people to verify and validate that we had a product of value. So that's something that also I think needs to be considered. Another thing is the maturity and security of these smart contracts. Now, if you're not doing anything smart contract related, then it just comes like who has better gas fees to make it make sense from a business point of view. But when you want to talk about smart contracts, Ethereum, in all honesty, has the biggest, most innovative, and most active environment of developers. And that's what's pushing the forefront of DeFi innovation, which this conference is named after, right? DeFicon. So, that's why we're doing a lot of things with the Ethereum right now, interacting with all these other protocols and whatnot. And I think that once we have a solid product, then we will explore how exactly we can branch out into these other different chains to kind of replicate this logic and make things work. But that's also my 2 cents into how, decisions were made into what blockchain to use when it comes to NFT development, especially if you're in DeFi.
Can I switch the conversation a little bit? I wanted to ask you guys, do you feel an emotional connection to any of your NFTs? Like in the Axie side, right? We talk about digital pets a lot because our Axies are like digital pets, right? And people laugh at me when I say I feel like connected to my Mystic Axie, but I contribute to an Axie scholarship that's branded after my Mystic. It's actually a big part of a community that we've built, and it's sort of an icon for this brand for my community specifically. So when I look at that Axie, it's not just another NFT like all the other ones I have on OpenSea. That thing is special to me. And if you offered me 100 ETH or even 1,000 ETH right now, I would not sell that thing. It is something I feel connected to. I mean, maybe that's cringe and ridiculous, but I'm curious if anyone else has had a similar experience.
I'm not going to say any specific NFT because I am staying agnostic here, but just from a personal experience, I'll let you know that even as a child, my Pokemon cards are hidden somewhere that nobody can find, and will not trade is on the back of every single one. So I feel very similar about my NFTs as I do to my Pokemon cards. So yes,
I resonate with what Lauren just said. One of my first games that's somewhat relatable in the crypto NFT space is actually Magic the Gathering, the card game. For those of you Magic fans out there, or Magic geeks like myself, I mean, I think that in many games out there, whether it's Pokemon, Magic, or others, the type of NFTs go after, the decks you build, the stuff you want to collect, whether you want your aggro or your control deck player, it tells a lot about your personality and whatnot, right? You have that connection too. And, to answer that question, I guess to a degree, yes. Some people, it's a lot more complex type of calculus, but I also know a lot of people buy NFTs that they can connect to. It looks like them in some shape or form, right? For those that are spiritual, they like NFTs with characters that have a third eye on their forehead, maybe, right? For the folks that are, are either themselves like feel like they're a rebel, or if they have an alter ego that's a rebel, they might like NFTs that look like that, like punks more. So, so I guess it depends based on that. Some people like cats, some people like dogs, bears. I think we got bears here,
and
for
even
this conference.
Within a collection, right, there could be specific things that jump out at you where, oh, they have pearls. Okay, that matches me. Now I'm like interested in all these different variations that are on brand for me, or I like pink or rainbows, and seeing that mixed into certain NFTs, it does start to build an emotional connection at a very ground level.
Just last night with Chain Guardians, I always see myself trying to convince myself that I am one of their characters. So there's definitely emotional connection there.
You are one of our characters.
Yes. But note here, the last thing we think of is, oh, I love this NFT because it's on XYZ chain. I think that's one of the last things we consider, right?
For me, I think, just to chime in here, it's interesting because, again, I picked this somewhere where I was reading, and somebody kind of likened it to almost an NFT journey, right? And most people, when they start out with their NFTs, it's like they buy NFTs for speculative reasons. Can I flip this NFT and make more like ETH or whatever it is? And then it kind of transitions to, I'm going to acquire more NFTs so that I can use them with the utility or whatever it may be. And then eventually it comes to a point where it's like, I'll buy these NFTs so because I can earn yield off them in certain ways, like through the play to earn or whatever. So it's like a step up rather than just a flipping. And then it comes to the point where it's like, holding an NFT for the purpose of belonging, right? The purpose of like, belonging to a community, or, being part of something a little bit bigger than just what is your individual self. And then finally, at the point where you collect that NFT because like you're referring to here, it's like a mirror of yourself in some way or another. It's like there's a famous quote around like, movies are mirrors in which we see ourselves, right? And it's that kind of like the emotional, let's say, connection that we have. And I think that without a doubt, NFTs have a massive capability of doing that at the point where somebody becomes financially liberated, no longer needs to worry about money. I think we were talking about this yesterday, it might have been with yourself, and we were saying that like the guy who spent, or the guy, I'm assuming it's a guy or girl who spent $400,000 on the Bored Ape recently is obviously not worried about money. They didn't buy that for necessarily the purpose of ever thinking that they could flip it before. It was probably for those kind of like self-actualized reasons of the emotional connection that NFT had when it resonated with them for when they bought it, right? So I think obviously for us, for myself and maybe all of us on the panel, we probably are maybe at a stage now where we're fairly financially comfortable at some point or another. Most of us will got into NFTs fairly early. So the reasons that you may buy an NFT may change. So to answer the question, yes, I hold NFTs where I have no intention of selling for any amount of money. Like Bitsy, who's our poster girl, she's the really beautiful blonde. She's a 1 of 15, and I just have no reason to ever want to sell her.
And sometimes I think it's not just even for money. It's you just want to show the world you support a cause or support a specific creator. I mean, look at Constitutional DAO, regardless whether you support it or not, or regardless even if Constitutional DAO is legitimate or a scam, some people put funds in it because they supported that idea it represents, right? There are people doing it for creators. There's this very interesting project that, this idea I was just talking about with some of our clients in our Vera ecosystem the other day is, imagine in the future you had this creator who, they're coming out with this music, they're trying to start their own channel, everything. Nobody knows who they are. So their value of their art, their music, their NFT may not be worth a lot, right? But imagine there was a way for you to contribute to this person you admire or support and have an NFT that represents that contribution, show the world that at this point in time, I plant a flag and I support this person. And then 5 years later, there's this big shot, right? And what's even better yet is that NFT rewards you for that financially. I mean, that's exactly what's possible. I mean, how many people here that some of us we know were supporters of layer 1 blockchains when Ethereum was ICOing, when Solana was nothing, was like 25 cents, or when some of these other blockchains, when Bitcoin was like, I don't know, used for buying pizza years ago, right? Imagine your purchase of that and you had an NFT that says, I supported this project back then. There was no NFTs back then, but that's pretty cool concept, right? If that was actually possible, not just, hey, I got these coins, now it's worth this much. So that is actually what I see myself wanting to participate in NFTs, because I want to show the world that I support this person at this point in time when they're nobody. And I just hope that pays it forward for others that have the ability to support others in the future when they're nobody. And sometimes when you support people at the very beginning, it's not even expensive. There's not a lot of cost to NFT. And that's the beauty of what this NFT can do using blockchain technology.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everybody goes to music festivals, and when you go to the airport, you still see people with all the bands on their arms, and it's, yo, bro, the festival's over. But it's much bigger than that. They want to go out there and see other people, and you see that wristband, you're like, high five, I was there too. And then many years down the road, like I know I have a fishbowl of all of them in my apartment, and that band could be worth a value, and it could show that you were there and you mattered, and you were a very, very like strong pillar in their career festival. So very cool what it can do. And yeah, just creating communities.
Yeah, I think you guys are absolutely right. Hit the nail on the head. I spend a lot of time talking to like folks in the traditional gaming space and trying to sell them on the GameFi and Axie Infinity value proposition. And some of us in the room have probably noticed that there's been a lot of pushback against NFTs specifically from centralized traditional gaming communities. Some of it very emotional and irrational, but still a lot of force and kind of vitriol behind that stuff. And I'm very just fascinated by that. And how can we break through to some of these people that are completely infatuated with FUD or arguments that don't really make sense once you dive into the technical side? And that is one of the arguments that actually does start to resonate with people, where, guys, you use Twitch, you're used to subscribing and donating and all these things to support creators, and you get nothing for it except maybe a shout out or maybe a pop up on stream. Imagine if you're donating, but you get something in return as a keepsake that says that you did that, like you were describing. That just makes perfect sense. And I think that's hard to argue against, right? Because that's just how we've been supporting artists for a long time in the mainstream.
Yeah, and just to to kind of further that, we refer to like our NFT just more than a JPEG. We think about the different classifications and the different kind of use cases that NFTs have. We only have to look at, like, say, larger proprietary platforms. Try not to name names, but in terms of like music revenue and flow, obviously some of those aggregators there, for example, like 85% of revenue they may take, if an artist does an NFT, you know where that revenue is going. Like it's completely shifting, the control of the wealth flow, and you therefore, again, just tying back to that sense of belonging. You know that you've supported that artist directly. That can be for music, or that can be for art, or it can be for like a gaming NFT. You've been part of the building the game, whatever it may be. There's a much more intimate relationship when purchasing NFTs across any classification than what can potentially exist outside of this space, because of how the revenue models and how the businesses are structured.
Well, and it's so open-ended. I mean, I use that Twitch reference because that's the world I come from on the esports side. But on the NFT side, we've seen like dancing, right? Like dancing clips. That's something that's popped up like pretty recently, where you're selling clips for these different moves, and that's not something that would really work on traditional platforms because it's not long-form live stream content. It's a edited, curated, 90-second piece or whatever. And being able to see creators and artists from these different areas utilize this, I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Also, just going back to gaming and play to earn. That's one of the reasons I got into crypto. Was as things become more automated, how do we redistribute wealth? Sorry about that. Was just if everybody has a cell phone and can be playing games and earning tokens that way, like that's a whole new avenue we're going down. To like fairly distributing money around the world in a way that we never thought we could. So it's really cool what's happening, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, so speaking of redistribution of wealth, one of the areas we're very passionate and focused and explore on is the area of social financing, or you can call it mortgages, right? Like this concept's not new. I mean, social entrepreneurship, you got Kiva.org, microfinancing. But I think with the rise of play to earn and games like Axie, it really has transformed a lot of lives in certain developing countries, for instance, where for us here in the first world countries, we borrow money from banks to buy a house and rent it out. But for them, where their average salary every year, maybe 150, or every month is $150 US dollars, they can go ahead and instead or buy an NFT and make money on it, making maybe extra 10, $40 a day, which is a big deal. And for us, what we're trying to do is even lower the cost of access even more. If they can't afford to buy an NFT, they can rent one, or they can borrow money to finance one. And right now, we're seeing a rise of those types of use cases, whether it's CeFi, centralized, or DeFi. Just like yesterday, I just saw in the news, Nexo, which is a centralized lending platform. They're basically now able to give loans to people that own crypto punks or apes. Up 20% of floor price, in my opinion. So it's starting to get there. And of course, I'm not saying these things are perfect, because there's a lot of questions left. How do you determine the floor pricing, right? Like there's who's the oracle for that, right? Who's the price oracle? Maybe Chainlink, right? Who's gonna, how do we need a lot more transactions to know what risks to take. But these are the things that we're slowly now accelerating towards. And I think that is a big win for consumers and entrepreneurs, because now there's a lot of these alternatives that traditional financing and banks cannot provide.
Absolutely. And in the case of Axie, we're sort of seeing our Axie NFTs gamify the education of decentralized finance and blockchain. For our 50% of users, we have 2.5 million daily active users right now. So we have millions of people that are brand new to this whole ecosystem, but because they got in through GameFi, they have this reason to start to learn more and do more research. And maybe it starts with, hey, I just want to earn tokens through playing Axie. But then they start to discover, oh, there's a DEX here. Oh, I can start staking. Oh, okay, I can start yield farm. Like there's all these different things you can do in the ecosystem. And the stories that warm my heart the most are the ones where people that say, hey, I started playing Axie because I thought the game looked fun. And now I'm buying tokens on other side chains. I'm, doing all this different DeFi stuff. And it's like, that is so powerful, right? We're getting this technology into the hands of the people that need it most and need access to these decentralized financial tools, and being able to put like a gamified layer on that, so it's a little bit less scary. That's really powerful, and that's been a big vehicle for just bringing new eyeballs into this ecosystem, which kind of benefits everyone, right? Axie a lot, but also the rest of us, where you start with one game, but a lot of gamers play multiple games, right?
Yeah, love or hate the JPEGs. It brought so many people into crypto and has led to so much education about what the space is about. So thankful for NFTs. I'm thankful that so many people caught their eye, and it is what it is today.
Thank you, NFTs.
Well, if anything, I guess a lot of the early use cases of NFTs, Chain Guardians, Axie games, whether or not we're gamers can relate to it. I mean, it's what's pushing the barriers of innovation. And NFTs is not just a technology; it's a social movement. It has a social mission behind a lot of these things. And I think very excited on what this next 5-10 years will come. I mean, in the crypto fungible DeFi space, it took no more than 5 years to hit 100 billion in TVL, I believe. I think with a lot of the DeFi infrastructure right now already existing, and additional innovation in the in the NFT DeFi space, which for those interested to know what are the top projects related to NFT DeFi, the entire landscape, tomorrow I'll actually, at noon, I believe, to check with the organizers, I'm going to be doing a keynote talk about the state of DeFi and NFT specifically, so anyone can learn who are the key projects in this space, which we're one of many. Feel free to check it out, or my talk tomorrow. But, I think we have definitely come a long way. And just like how I believe traditional banks and traditional institutions have been really gatekeepers to the financial industry, NFTs and DeFi that's coming up next, I think will have a lot of disruptive power that really empowers different communities. And it's up to conferences like DeFicon and developers and innovators all across the world in this ongoing dialogue to figure out what is that use case or use cases that we can bring this value to everyone in a decentralized format. So we appreciate a lot of the early games that have really kicked off this movement.
Yeah, so I guess I'll ask you guys a question. So if you don't have an NFT right now, if you're a new person to crypto, how would you go about, choosing your first NFT?
That is a hard question because I feel like everybody has such a unique path in terms of how they discover this stuff, how they get onboarded into the ecosystem, whether you're more of a lone wolf that finds a community that kind of guides you, or if you have some friends that are already interested that can help you on that journey. I onboarded somebody into the Axie ecosystem who was completely new to crypto. And what got him to understand was we went on vacation together and I gave him one of my Axie accounts and he played on it. And he paid for the whole vacation by playing Axie and paid for it with tokens, at least his share of it. And that was what opened his eyes to, okay, this is real. As he self-described, I was a person that hid my money in a shoebox under my bed before this. So his first NFT was the Avenged Sevenfold collection that popped out, and that's how I knew about it. And it was interesting to see his journey as he was like, okay, I'm in this now, I got to figure out what is my first NFT. And he waited until something that was on his radar. It was a band that he liked and that he was passionate about. He wanted to be part of their fan club anyway, so it was just a no-brainer. This is a great NFT for me. So I think you probably want to be patient and just look for what community resonates with you.
I think I have an interesting story. Well, I used to play a lot of Web 2 mobile games, and a lot of them recently has been just really low quality and play to win, I believe, right? You spend so much time and money into these games, you don't own a single thing, and the games can deplatform or take away your assets just like that, or they don't let you rent it or sell your account or anything like that. So out of frustration, this is what actually opened my eyes out to the play to earn or simply the NFT powered blockchain games. Because if I'm spending so much time and money into a game or a specific ecosystem, I should own it, right? So that was, I would say, go play more of these games in the Web 2 world, and then try a Web 3 blockchain game. Maybe you appreciate the right to ownership. And if you're talking about NFTs that's not necessarily related to a game, I would say, what really got me into this world was just similar to your story about hanging out with different groups of people, right? I mean, I know during COVID, a lot of these groups have moved online, like on Clubhouse, on Discord. And yes, you can try that. But if you have the fortunate opportunity to meet some of these people in real life and some of these communities, the people are all from different backgrounds. They're amazing. I mean, like we were just at Basel in Miami, all the different people. It was like a mixture of Burning Man with Coachella plus, I don't know, Money 2020 executives, all there discussing really interesting topics. And, you'll start to see that NFTs is not just some JPEG art, but it's this social movement and that intersects between art and culture and everything that matters in our society.
I think there's been some really good points there. Just to present as a devil's advocate here, if you're a complete, like, let's say, newbie coming into the space and looking to kind of ascertain your first NFT, that typically speaking, there's some general rules that you can follow. Anything that's just super high mint, there's loads and loads of it. Often it's just like normal economics, right? Supply and demand. So if you're thinking about NFTs in terms of like a value proposition, then anything there's lots of, the likelihood is that the value is going to not be there. So, looking for things with rarity, low mint, scarcity as some general like do's, if you like, just holistically speaking. And then I think that you then kind of have to look a little bit wider, and you go, okay, you know, what utility is going to be baked into these NFTs? And I always bring it back to that to the utility, because, you know, there's not going to be another. There's never going to be another Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Or there's just not, because the thing about Bored Apes was that they hit their timing was perfect, and the kind of, you know, there was a lot of different, let's say, macro factors that played into the reason why that just kind of took off the way that it did. And, you know, actually, ironically, they were very much the working class hero kind of representatives and NFTs, and now it's like really kind of exclusive and people can't afford them. So, you know, you can't be looking at, like, let's say, PFP projects and going, okay, like from a value proposition perspective, you know, I'm going to be acquiring this NFTs to, you know, to make money, if you like, or, you know, to flip them. It's just kind of, it's almost impossible to do that with any meaningfulness, unless you just really like the art, you know. Then
Sure.
Get it. Yeah, if it resonates with something inside you in terms of that belonging, cool. Yeah. But as a general, like, do's and don'ts, if I was being honest and speaking to, like, my friends and family, I'd be like, look at the scarcity, look at the rarity, look at how many mints there are, look at the utility, and also look at the team behind, you know, what are they building, what are the plans, what are the vision. It all factors into any consideration for an NFT purchase.
Yeah, real quick, for almost all of these NFT collections, a 10K PFP, there's a Discord or some other community, a Telegram that you can join. You don't have to own one of the NFTs to join the Discord and see who's in there, what do the channels look like, what's the dialogue like, what's the community like, what are they all about, how do they engage with each other. That can often be a really telling part of your research of, like, is this a community I want to join, or are they not speaking my language?
Yeah, and just to go off the exclusivity, curious if you guys have any thoughts around, you know, high value exclusive events attached to projects like Bored Ape Yacht Club. Do you think the NGMI attitude is going to scare other people away from building communities?
Well, I mean, we referenced this a little bit yesterday, myself and yourself, Andrew. We talked about, like, even likening it to when we referred to the traditional gaming, you know, communities kind of rejecting NFTs for this, and I alluded to the fact maybe there's a little bit of that, you know, we've missed out now. We can't get involved. It's too late, and, you know, therefore, you know, is the exclusivity of certain, like, clubs or NFTs, you know, a driving factor in that consideration? I think, sadly, at this stage, we're probably going through a process where that is true. You know, there is a lot of, like, I think, I mean, even myself, you know, as a project founder, like, there's certain NFTs that come out and then they're flying value. You're like, damn it, I missed out on that. NFTs are crap. But, you know, in all seriousness, like, you know, I had an ape, you know, sold it way too cheap, as many people probably have similar stories with NFTs and whatever else. And I think that part of that does feed into that. And that's why I think it's a very dangerous game in some cases, with the reasons as to why people are ascertaining NFTs. And I think that we've just gone through, like, a parabolic rise in people getting involved and purchasing NFTs. And the slight worry for that is that from a you know, a blockchain gaming project that really emphasizes the importance of utility in NFTs and their interoperability, is that it might scare away a lot of people from, you know, being involved in the space, or you know, ascertaining more NFTs and truly understanding, you know, the intrinsic and fundamental values of those NFTs, because they've bought a PFP project NFT, and then they've just kind of had, you know, the founders gone, well, I'm not building anything else. There's your artwork. That's what you bought. And people are going, what the hell? Like, you know, I spent $500 on this. What can I do with it, dude? Come on, sort me out. So this, you know, there is definitely, I think, a little bit of that, and it's a little bit kind of scary. But I think it's also vital in terms of a process of maturity for the space as well.
Well, I'll say, I mean, these clubs, exclusive clubs, is no different than the real world, I guess, right? You got country clubs, you got exotic car clubs and whatnot. It's just maybe you don't know about it. But what I'll say is, you know, well, if you're not sure if an NFT is for you, or you want to make that big commitment financially, well, rent one, right? I mean, that's the plug for my own project, but rent one, try it, check out the community, use the NFT a little bit, attend the events or whatever utilities it can provide, see if it's for you. And if it's not, try a different one.
Or earn free tokens on Chain Guardians and then use those tokens to buy an NFT. How about
There you go,
that?
Chain Guardians, free tokens.
Just joking.
Or you could buy an Axie.
Yeah, just buy it. You can.
Regardless, I think a lot of these clubs give you +1. So find a friend who's in the club, if anything else, and they'll bring you to the party. So I think
Absolutely.
I think it's all about everybody wanting to get in the party, like at the end of the day, and being a part of the party is what's about. So
Isn't
just
that why it's
sticking
such a
with it.
hard balance, though? Because
Yeah.
if you're not exclusive at all, then people don't want to join because anybody can join and it's not special anymore. And sometimes
wanna-
exclusivity can just be around like, hey, we're all gamers or we're all into music, right? It can be a very high level exclusivity, but you have to have something to rally behind. But how do you limit that so it's not too exclusive so you can scale and grow and bring in new users, but still maintain that value? It's tricky. It's hard.
And I think that part of the answer to that is about the open metaverse, so to speak. The true potential in terms of disruption for NFTs, in my view, is the ability for interoperability. Obviously, we know about like provable ownership. That's so important, right? But interoperability, like that's where I think the true beauty and the untapped potential for NFTs currently lies. And when I talk about interoperability, I'm not just talking about chain interoperability. I'm talking about interoperability across product. And I think when many people think about the metaverse, they often, or certainly in my case, I think that quite often people envision this, I have an avatar, which is represented as an NFT, and I can use that in, let's say, Decentraland, Sandbox, Somnium space, and it will follow me wherever I go. And I think that once those kind of tools are built and once people come to the party with that sort of open metaverse approach, and we're a little bit way off that because traditional business models don't lend themselves to that, sadly. That's when I think that more inclusive kind of approach might take hold, and that's when some of the naysayers and some people who reject it might maybe hopefully come to the Jedis. Is that about?
We have no idea. Time isn't real. We have no idea. Thank you, everybody.
Time just got real. Yeah. Thank you so
Time
much.
just got real.
much.